by thanking the organizers. I know it took quite a lot of effort to bring us all together, and it's a great achievement, and as Mazen and Haidar mentioned and Lubna mentioned yesterday, you also provided a great opportunity for us to meet, and we are very grateful to you for this opportunity to meet you and to meet each other. It's easier because of the Israeli oppression to meet here than to meet in Palestine, where we should meet. And hopefully one day we all be there without the need to go to frozen hills of Stuttgart to create joint life. And I think that's the gist of the Zionist story, that it doesn't allow people to lead normal life and to be normal friends, that they need to go through all that hardship in order to fulfill a very elementary human impulse to live together. We live in very bizarre times. On the one hand, we could not have wished as activists for a better Israeli government. I think that this particular government makes any sophisticated analysis of what Zionism in Israel is all about quite redundant. It's very easy to expose not only the Israeli policies, but also the racist ideology behind it. On the other hand, Israel is the most successful economy in the West in the last 3 years. It has done much better than Germany, much better than most of the economic powers of the West. Its banking system is very stable. Its currency is one of the strongest in the world, and it doesn't suffer at all from all the hardships that have affected the Western economy and capitalist economy in the last 3 years. The result is a very bewildering gap between what average and decent people in the West think about Israel and the way the Israelis, especially the Israeli Jews, think about themselves. They think that they live in a very successful society. They believe that the Arab-Israeli conflict is over, that the Palestine question has ended. Yes, you have a problem in Gaza. Yes, you have a problem with Hezbollah in Lebanon, but this is a global problem. It's not a particular Israeli problem. This is part of the so-called war against terror. We also live in bizarre times because despite, and Haidar talked, and Mazen talked about it yesterday in a very detailed way, so I don't have to repeat it, we also live in a time where particular and specific Israeli policies are severely criticized. People go and demonstrate against the massacre in Gaza. People go and demonstrate against the attack on the flotilla to Gaza. And yet, nobody dares to attack the ideology that is behind these policies. There is no demonstration against Zionism, because the European Parliament even regards a demonstration against Zionism as anti-Semitism. Imagine, in the days of apartheid South Africa, if you were not allowed to demonstrate against the apartheid in South Africa, but only against the Soweto massacre. And this is still a great Israeli success. And Germany plays a very important role in this success. That the main problem And the main reason for the criminal policies is not analyzed, is not discussed, is not touched upon. Only the symptoms. I'm not a doctor, I'm not a physician, but I know that if you deal with the symptoms and not with the cause of the illness, you don't cure the patient. So I think that what we really need as activists, and it's easier to talk to you than I think to talk to people who know nothing about the conflict or are totally on the other side of the coin, that we have to change a little bit what we are doing. Not in terms of our very successful BDS campaign or the kind of things that we do in Germany and elsewhere in solidarity with the Palestinian people. I think this is an impressive chapter in European civil society activity, no less impressive, as was pointed out yesterday, than the chapter in the struggle against apartheid. But we are still, most of us, are still not using the right language. Most of us are still not employing the kind of dictionary that we should employ in order to drive the message home of what are we dealing with. Because one of the greatest paradoxes of what goes on in Israel and Palestine is that on the one hand, it's not a complicated story. We've been there before. European settlers coming, either genociding or kicking out the indigenous people. The Zionists have not invented anything new in this. And on the other hand, Israel succeeded, with the help of its allies everywhere, including in this country, to build this complex explanation that is so complex that only they can understand. And you are not allowed to interfere, especially if you are Germans. You are not allowed to interfere in this analysis because it's very complex. No, it's not. It is really not complex. And this is why history is so important. Understanding the not so complex history of what the Zionist movement was and is doing to the indigenous native people of Palestine is what the story is all about. Yes, there are other stories connected to it, I agree. The fate of the Jews in Europe, the Holocaust, I don't know, the relationship between Christianity and Judaism over the last 2,000 years. But these are sidebars. These are not the main story. They belong to the story, but you don't begin this. This is why in Israel, even unfortunately Palestinian students who are Israeli citizens, when they learn about the history of their own country, they begin in Odessa. I remember my Palestinian students in the university saying, can you explain to us why we who were born in Marar or Sakhnin or in the Nakab have to begin our history in Odessa? They didn't even know where Odessa was. And I said, that's because you are under occupation, even inside Israel. Not just in the West Bank, not just in the Gaza Strip. Palestinians inside Israel are also under occupation and are also under colonization. And if we don't understand this, we will not break the deadlock. Because what is called the peace process that began in 1967 is taking place on Mars, on the moon. This is the only peace process in history that I know of that had no relevance whatsoever with the problem it was supposed to solve. What they were talking about in Geneva in 1977, in Madrid in 1991, in Oslo in 1993, had very little to do with the essence of the problem. It dealt with the symptoms, I agree. It dealt with the symptoms, but not with the essence. And this is the second greatest Israeli success. That not only the public opinion does not deal with the essence, but also the peace process very successfully succeeds in avoiding it. So if you go back to history, and you are using today the right language, you are not anachronistic, as someone was trying to say this morning. You are not anachronistic. You are actually a very relevant, updated person. I'll explain what I mean. If you say that Zionism is colonialism, you are the youngest and most updated student of history I've met. Anyone who will try to deter you by saying this is anachronism, this is not helpful, this is anti-Semitism, is anachronistic and lives on the moon or in Mars and can continue to talk about something which has nothing to do with what's going on the ground. Actually, if you know Hebrew, you know that the whole Hebrew language from 1882 until today, which was constructed to describe what the Zionist movement is doing in Palestine, uses again and again the word hityashvut, hitnachalut. And the only way of translating these words is to colonize. There's no other translation. So the Zionist movement in the late 19th century, when colonialism had a very good public relations, was very gladly using the word to colonize. But then they learned that colonialism was not so popular. So they translated it differently. They found the word settlement, which means something else in English. And they found the word, they said, yes, it's colonized, but it's not like colonized. It's a different kind. Again, it's complex. And only we, the Israeli Jews, understand why Israeli colonization and white colonization in Africa is not the same. So if you're not an Israeli Jew, you don't understand it. If you're not a Zionist Israeli Jew, of course you cannot understand it. And I think this is important to bring back in our teaching in schools, in our approach to the public, in our negotiations with the political elite in this country and in the West, to say to them, you are dealing with the last colonialist project, and as bizarre as it sounds, even in the 21st century, this colonialist project employs the same tactics of colonialism in the 19th century. And I think that every decent person in the West, like in the time of colonialism, would not stand on the side of colonialism. But you have to clean your language. You have to clean your mind, and you have to think that it's totally irrelevant what people say about what you say. It doesn't matter what they say. They will regard you as anti-Semitic even if you support the two-state solution. Because it means you don't support the two-state solution as they understand it. Because you don't understand the problem. You think that this two-state solution is a sovereign, independent state over the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. No, you don't understand it. The state for the Palestinians are two Bantustans, divided to 12 in the West Bank, contained in a concentration camp in Gaza, has no connection between it, has a little municipality in Ramallah which would be called the government. This is a state. And if you don't understand that this is a state, it shows that you still have to learn about the complexity of the country. Now, colonialism is one message from the past that we should accept and we should deal with. And we should recruit the veteran as well as the younger cohorts of activists to work for something which universally should be very easy to recruit people for. the fight against colonialism, the fight against the idea that someone from the outside has the right to demolish here because of the Israeli oppression to meet here than to meet in Palestine, where we should meet. And hopefully one day we all be there without the need to go to frozen hills of Stuttgart. And Haidar mentioned, and Lubna mentioned yesterday, you also provided a great opportunity for us to meet. And we are very grateful to you for this opportunity to meet you and to meet each other. It's easy to create a joint life. And I think that's the gist of the Zionist story, that it doesn't allow people to lead normal life and to be normal friends, that they need. Thank you. Begin by thanking the organizers. I know it took quite a lot of effort to bring us all together, and it's a great achievement, and as Mazen